To the uninitiated, Batman is a fictional superhero who is just an ordinary man. He has no superpowers unlike his superhero counterparts like Superman. Because of this, Batman could be seen as relatable, as he isn't genetically mutated from another planet or in possession of supernatural powers. He is human. Batman's real identity is that of Bruce Wayne, a man who as a young boy witnessed his parents killed at gunpoint. With the loss of his parents, Bruce Wayne created the idea of a costume vigilante called Batman in order to fight crime and clean up the city of Gotham. To protect his Batman identity, he lives in his daytime life as a playboy millionaire to draw suspicion away from his nighttime adventures. Batman's home city of Gotham is made up of old Gothic style buildings and is depicted as a dark and gritty place. A place where crime has been left to fester and grow, where gangs run wild and the police can do nothing to stop them, as they either don't have the power or they themselves have been corrupted by organized crime. Batman frequently takes on leaders of top crime gangs in Gotham, which include the likes of the Joker, the Penguin, Riddler, Two-Face, as well as many numerous other villains. By choosing to include such interesting characters from Batman's universe, Rocksteady engages its players by making the player want to learn more about these villains. Rocksteady have used this strategy and have taken the 70 years worth of media, comics, TV, film of Batman and have chosen the most recognizable villains, places, and storylines. They did this so that there is a high chance of the player being familiar and more open to engaging with some of the characters. Characters are reimagined visually to appear as if they lived in 2011. For example, instead of Penguin having a monocle like he has in the past, he is depicted with a broken glass bottle as his monocle. However, whilst modernizing the Batman characters, Rocksteady also made an effort to hint at older traditional Batman features and stories. Batman's suit has an added blue and grey tint to reference the old Batman series. They also added yellow highlights to his belt to hark back to the original Batman incarnation. All of the characters that are depicted incorporate some features from the comics and the original cartoon series. They do this so that people who have read the comics or watched the original cartoon experience some familiarity with the characters. Characters have unique, recognizable personalities and have their own agendas that they are trying to complete. Rocksteady have engaged the player in the Arkham City world by including points of interest. Some examples of these points of interest are Riddler trophies, discovery of side quests, observation of the city that they have created, and incorporation of different locations from previous Batman media. Places from the game world are not merely made up, they are all scenes from the comic and from the cartoons. For example, there is the Iceberg Lounge, Penguin's famous hideout, Gotham Ace Chemicals where Joker fell into the vat of chemicals that transformed him into the Joker, and many more. You can also find the Playhouse where Batman's parents were shot and killed, and you can venture around the back and see the chalk outline where they died. The team at Rocksteady have done an incredible job of constructing the world of Arkham City. The attention to detail they have implemented is amazing. For instance, in the steel mill owned by the Sedonis family, aka Black Mask, who appears in the game, you can even see that the calendars and posters in it have Sedonis Industry logo as a heading. Each Crimebusters territory in the game has markings to symbolize their area. For example, Joker's area has clown faces tagged around the place, or in Two-Face's area, campaign posters up on the walls and buildings. Even the electronic locks on buildings have a Wayne Tech logo on them, as Wayne Tech is the biggest manufacturer of electronic devices. The attention to detail goes as far as the food crates for the prisoners and the food itself having an Arkham City logo printed on them. All of these seemingly insignificant details are actually very important in making the world feel real and not just a computer-generated world. By Rocksteady including these little details, they increase the immersion level of the game and the player's engagement and experience. The art direction adds to the player's immersion in the game as it is meant to make them feel as though the inmates of the city are repressed and gain the sense of a power struggle between some of the biggest crime lords in the Batman universe. The art direction of the buildings in the game is loosely based on buildings that actually exist, in order to communicate to the player that the buildings in Arkham City are believable and could actually exist. The art team at Rocksteady have taken elements from George Orwell's 1984 book and movie. When observing the city's emblem, you see it as an upside-down version of the logo of the INGSO. They have chosen a similar colour scheme for the propaganda of Arkham City as Nazis' war posters, adding further to the immersion of the game to make you feel as though there is a repressive regime running Arkham City. The events leading up to Arkham City releases a comic book series to build hype for the game by using the strategy of transmedia. Rocksteady were able to give future players a more in-depth, engaging story experience by this means. The story of Arkham City submerges the player into the game by keeping a main objective in mind of the player. For example, over the loudspeaker, Dr. Hugo Strange is always announcing the Protocol 10 will commence in X number of hours, counting down as the story progresses. This adds a sense of mystery for the player and makes them feel like Batman, trying to figure out what Protocol 10 is by using his detective combat skills and gadgets to discover the truth. To make the player feel like Batman as if in the real world, they've included side missions that appear at random. For instance, the player could spot a dead body in the street while traversing the rooftops and fly down to investigate, which initiates a side mission where you uncover the killer of the person. By including these extra missions in their game, they engage the player by giving them a choice to play them and a reason to explore the city in search of them. Discovering these extra missions gives upgrades and extra information about future games and certain villains' motives upon completion. By the inclusion of these side missions, it creates a feeling that the world is complete, and in all mediums that Batman appears, he does not always just face one villain at a time, and so that Batman has to multitask and deal with numerous problems or villains at once. For example, the Riddler side missions require you to collect Riddler trophies. You obtain these by solving riddles, completing combat feats, and collecting hidden trophies throughout the world. These trophies unlock audio diaries from various gang leaders in the world. world. For instance, there are audio diaries of talk between Hugo Strange and the Riddler, discussing how Hugo Strange got put in charge of Arkham City. These audio diaries engage the player by giving backstory to the city and on the gang leaders as well as their motivations in the city. The audio diaries that you can collect let you delve into the backstory and history of each character that appears in the game. This gives the player a connection to the character you're listening about on the diary, giving the player insight into their history and why they're in the city and their goals and intentions. During the story of the game, there are parts where you can play as Catwoman, experiencing the game from the other side of the coin. As Catwoman, the player breaks into vaults and steals things. The main aspect of Catwoman in the comics and TV series is that she has her own agenda, not fighting crime like Batman. Rocksteady have played on the comic book, TV, and film adaptations of Catwoman, where she and Batman have a romantic side together, going so far as sometimes Batman letting Catwoman go after stopping her committing a crime. The reverse sometimes occurs as well, with Catwoman sometimes leaving her loot from a crime in order to save Batman's life. They play on this in the story of Arkham City, where Catwoman has the chance to save Batman's life, and the game gives the player playing as Catwoman at this point a choice to save either Batman or leave Arkham City. Given the player the choice, engages the player by letting them see both sides of Catwoman and provide a better connection with the character. As she is not always going to make the right choice, she is going to make the right choice for her. Batman is the world's greatest detective, and so Rocksteady have included hints to the plot of their next game and hidden Easter eggs for the player to find if they are clever enough. An example of this is due to Scarecrow. There are 3 different transmissions in the city that the player can find using one of Batman's gadgets. However, the transmissions are just a series of numbers which are all different and use 3 different ciphers to decode. If the player can decode them, it gives them hints to Batman's next game. There is also a ship in the dock that if you use a gadget you can hack into and discover a shipment belonging to Scarecrow. These Easter eggs immerse the player into the world, for there is no indication that they exist, unless the player can find them and figure out what to do with them. It brings out the inner detective of the player. By adding in Easter eggs into their game containing extra information about the studio's next potential game, Rocksteady have ensured the engagement of the player by helping them seek out and finding extra pieces of information and explore the elaborate game world. Rocksteady have made their game flow perfectly, which is the strategy of increasing the challenge of the game incrementally. Where some other games start off easy and ramp the difficulty up to a point at which it is impossible to play, Rocksteady have a player-paced experience where the player can progress at any place they choose. If they want a more challenging experience, they increase the difficulty or progress further in the main story to have more difficult enemies appear, such as snipers that can cause massive damage to Batman. By increasing the difficulty of their game incrementally, they engage their players by always offering a new challenge for them to complete. To counter these difficult enemies, the player must implement Batman's skill of stealth. Batman is known for his stealth ability, and as such, Rocksteady have included this into the gameplay. Batman is a detective, and as such he is to be a sleuth, and generally not to be seen. Due to this, Rocksteady has made stealth an important part of the game. When the player is in stealth mode, they have all the power and can generally take out an enemy in one hit and without being seen. All incarnations of Batman highlight the stealth component, and when he is in stealth mode, he is almost untouchable, and he is at his most powerful. Rocksteady have made the player feel strong as Batman in this element. In doing so, they make the player aware that Batman is human. As such, if he goes head on against an enemy with a gun, he is dead within seconds, but if he hides in the shadows and uses detective mode to survey his surroundings, they can then move around and make a stealth attack. By including the stealth element of Batman in the game, and attacking from the shadows, it engages the player by making them feel as powerful as Batman is portrayed in other media. Along with the stealth element, Rocksteady plays on the detective side of Batman, and so they give the player gadgets that allow them to see the world through the eyes of Batman. They do this by allowing the player to see the world in detective mode. In this mode, the player sees the world in a light blue tinge that highlights interesting parts of the world, including enemies and if they are armed or unarmed, places where Batman can use his gadgets, or objects and points of interest that are important to the storylines or objectives. By giving the player the ability to see in this detective mode, they make the player feel as though they are seeing the world through the eyes of Batman, and in doing so they engage the player in the fiction of the world. The gadgets involved in the game give you more power and make you feel it more like Batman, for in all incarnations of Batman, the most memorable thing about him are his gadgets. These gadgets, while in a fictional universe, are within the realm of possibility that they could actually exist in the real world. By keeping the gadgets within the realm of possibility, they add to the immersion of the game and the game world, for they make the player believe that they themselves could actually become Batman in real life. By giving the player a variety of cool gadgets like from the movies and comics, they make the player want to discover new gadgets and how to use them to their advantage. The combat in Batman Arkham City is visceral. It makes the player feel like Batman. Rocksteady does this by letting you use all of Batman's gadgets he has obtained, by being able to throw a batarang while combining it with other combat skills. Combat makes you feel as powerful as Batman. They do this by making your punches and kicks feel as if they are hurting your enemies. When fighting enemies, they will fall down and look as if they are in pain and scream out. By making their combat feel visceral and immediate, they make the player feel as if they are actually Batman. When you knock out an enemy, a sound plays that lets you know that the enemy is down, and when you defeat the last enemy in an area, it slows down the animation animation and shows you knocking him out. The animation is done by using conventional animation techniques for games like motion capture. All animation is motion captured to give the feeling of realistic movements of Batman and all of the other characters from the game. The only other interesting feature to do with animation that Rocksteady pioneered in Arkham Asylum and further developed is the free flow combat of their Batman games. Free flow combat comes into play as Batman's combo meter increases. The more damage Batman does, the more special moves become available to him. The special moves include one-hit takedowns and gadget special moves. All of these are animated in such a way that they all feel natural and flow together. At no time does the combat feel like it slows down or feel non-responsive. If you do the wrong combat move at the wrong time, it's your own fault and you will be punished for it. This system and the animation for it Rocksteady has created ensures that players stay engaged and immersed by the game's fiction by making the movements of Batman and other characters he interacts with feel real and so not to break the flow of the game. Rocksteady have successfully combined and implemented the strategies of game flow, art direction, transmedia, stealth, visual combat, great storytelling into an immersive experience. In implementing these strategies, Rocksteady have created an incredibly engaging experience for their player. It is no surprise that their game was awarded many Game of the Year awards. They also achieved an average Metacritic score across all platforms of 93.5 out of 100.